Okay, and we're live on the Blam Partners Inner Circle. Welcome today's guest, Mr. Sean Miller from Brighton. How you, Sean? How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you, Grant. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Absolute pleasure, mate. Absolute pleasure. Now, Sean and I go back a bloody long way. It has to be said. It's probably longer than we care to admit. We were having this chat. We had a bit of a catch up last week, didn't we?
Yeah.
How long's it? When did we first start working together, mate? Can you remember?
Well, you weren't a dad when
it was before I had kids, and I've got a 19-year-old.
20. I think it was 2001 we first met.
Wow. Do you know what? That's probably right. That is the year I set up my first business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn. DAM.
That was it. Damn. I've now got Blam. Used to be Damn. And that was my first digital marketing agency. Digital advertising and marketing, DAM stood for. And I was lucky enough to start working with Sean back when you worked for Halfords. Yeah. So what was your role at Halfords?
I was a people development consultant. So what that means in English is that I would work with clients and translate their learning needs into solutions. And it was the first opportunity that I had in really getting involved in OD, organisational development, communicating and engaging strategy. So the work that I did with you was actually like my first step into that world.
Which is now the world that you are heavily involved in.
Yeah.
And the project that we worked on, I think it would be fair to say, was pretty life-changing for me. And that's why it's a real pleasure to sort of, have this chat, because it was the first time, in fact, you were the first person to introduce me to a more sort of robust idea of core values.
Yeah.
And we worked on the core values for Halfords. And from my part of it, I did a lot of the sort of the design and artwork and marketing. And I remember this, guys, because it was my first business. I'd just set up on my own. I'd handed in my notice to my previous business, and Halfords was my first client. But I worked with the marketing department normally. And when we got introduced, it was the first time that it's kind of internal branding that we worked on. So the client, instead of being the people that go to Halfords and buy their oil and get the car serviced and whatnot, and I still use Halfords for that, actually. Used them yesterday. I'm still a brand advocate for Halfords. Still got a soft spot for them. What Sean was doing was actually trying to inspire and excite, which was one of the core values. I'll never forget it. A target audience that was the staff, because at the time Halfords had, 400 stores?
400 stores, 9,000 staff.
Yeah, and so it was your job to get them excited about working for Halfords.
Yeah.
And that's where I got introduced to core values. Now, a lot of you, or all of you Blam partners, will know that core values is something that I'm a huge advocate. One of the first things I do, Sean, when anybody joins Blam, the first thing I'd take them on is a core values course. I get them to do their own core values. So inadvertently, you've influenced all these people's lives, mate.
Thank you.
So that was brilliant, and we then went on to do further work when Sean actually went to work for Gap Clothing. We did other similar projects for Gap, and I loved working at Gap as well. We were at their national distribution centre in Northampton, I think it was it? It
was in Rugby.
Rugby, there we go. And again, it was about inspiring their staff. And I remember that job specifically, Sean, because it was way back before. These days, if you go into sort of, you see the adverts about, Google offices and Facebook offices and how really cool they are. But back then, that wasn't really a thing, was it? But what you did was you took their sort of common room, if you like, their staff room, and turned it into this playground.
where people could have fun.
And it was awesome. It was awesome. And we did all the graphics and the internal branding, and I thought I really loved that branding. And it was completely different to the consumer facing, Gap branding. It was a brand specifically for the staff, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I remembered as well, you actually helped me engage in my next job, which was with Ascend. And I don't know if you can remember this.
I do remember that one. Yeah.
You actually helped you visualize the work that we've done and the process on creating the values at Ascendant. And I had a very, traditional, hard-nosed CEO, and the work that you create to bring it to life really helped us land the values in that organization as well. So that only occurred, I was thinking about it after we spoke last week. So I think the way that you've been involved in helping me educate and support values has taken on many different, forms and different faces.
But it's interesting because we haven't worked together for a while. In fact, since I've been running Blam, we've kept in touch a bit on Facebook, but not really done any work, because now, as you have now actually made the transition, I've been working with smaller businesses. That's been my, for probably the last 10 years. Small businesses, small business owners, entrepreneurs is the focus, and all the Blam partners watching this, that's the majority of their focus. And you have now taken the plunge yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Scary and exciting at the same time.
Yeah. So you've been in the corporate world for how many years?
Well, I got into learning and development in 1997.
Right.
So what, 23, 24, almost 25 years.
Wow. And so, and just, I've not asked you this before. Throughout that period, did you ever have the itch to do your own thing?
Yes, but I never felt ready until now.
Right.
As part of me, I wanted to learn everything I could from the corporate world. And I wanted to be in roles where I could work globally, where I could understand different cultures, where I could get exposed to different elements of the talent offering. And now that I've done that, I've found that there's been in my corporate life, there's been a bit of repetition in the respect that what I'm being asked to do, yes, the context is different, but the content's actually pretty similar. So I've got to a point where I feel comfortable that I've learned what I need to learn from the corporate world. And very simply, I know we're not supposed to say this, but I'm 50 now.
You can say that, mate. I'm not, by the way. Next year.
I want to spend the rest of my working life doing what I enjoy. And that's really, and that, without plugging my business, is what my business is about as well. It's helping people shine, bringing out the best in people. And that's what I want to do for other people. And I want to do it for myself as well.
And what do you think made you come to that conclusion now? Is there anything specific? What I'm getting at is lockdown, I think, got a lot of people to do some proper, navel gazing.
Well, my catalyst, in the total interest of transparency, that the organisation I worked for was restructured, and my permanent role was eliminated as part of that restructure. And I always thought, well, I've got maybe one corporate role left in me, and I'm a firm believer in the power of the universe, and the universe tells you stuff. And I was quite lucky. I was in a financial position where, I didn't have to get a job straight away. I could pay my mortgage. So I thought, the stars are aligning. So that was the catalyst. I got a bit of a push, and I'm really thankful for that push.
That's brilliant. That is, because that so often happens, and I ask these kind of questions, Sean, because a lot of people that end up watching these chats, they might be thinking of starting their own business themselves, and what we found is throughout lockdown, we had a lot of partners that were in full-time work doing their normal business, whatever their business was, or their job, that had bought a bland partnership. So effectively they would have their own business and they would be able to sell websites and apps, social media, etc. But they hadn't taken the plunge. But when we went through the lockdown, we had loads of them that actually got rid of their main job and went full-time on their business and never regretted it. When really a lot of these people, they could have done it, a while ago. But we do all need a little push sometimes, don't we?
And I think working in the corporate world, I know, I can only speak for myself, but I'd imagine this is a lot of people's view. There's a view of stability in having a corporate job. That is just a myth. That doesn't happen anymore. It's been a long time since, you could join an organization when you were as an apprentice and then work with the same organization until retirement. So whether you're working within a corporate organization or for yourself, we're all freelancers.
We are really, aren't we? We're all disposable. So you are master of your own shit now. So, and we had a bit of a catch up about this last week because you reached out to me. No, it was great catching up with you, mate. And because you're now you're manning your own ship, we had a little catch up and a little chat. Mm-hmm. Do you want to just tell everybody a bit about your business, what it's called, and what service you provide?
But can I just go back a little bit, because I want to weave in what you helped me with last week, because the last 7 days have been actually quite transformative. So my business is called Brighton, and it's about helping people shine. And I guess my thinking when I joined the business was, I want to do what I love doing, and my skill set is quite broad because I've lived and worked in the corporate world for 20 odd years. So I can turn my hand to pretty much anything within the talent space, whether that's creating strategy, organizational values, putting together management development programs, doing sales training, and blah, 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 blah. I can turn my hand to almost anything in that space. But what the conversation with you helped me do was I needed to focus. In fact, your words were, it's a bit wishy-washy.
I do have to apologize for my directness sometimes.
No, it's fine. I like a bit of directness. And what that has enabled me to do is really, yes, I've got all these interests, but really focus on, A, what do I love doing? But B, what am I world class in? And whilst I can turn my hand to many things, the thing that I am famous for in organizations is my ability to help people present themselves. So in my conversations with clients, I've really focused the conversation around presentation, and literally having been a bit in the wilderness for the last couple of months. And, I've had a good time. I've focused on health and education. Like this week, I really kicked myself up the bum, and I've landed a contract, and I've got 3 prospects, which I'm hoping, one I hear on from today, so fingers crossed on that one. And the other 2 I hear on by the end of the week. And all I've done is focus.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. And the chat we had last week, we talked about your sort of USP, what makes you different. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I'm fascinated by the way that you, and just so everybody knows, one of Sean's sort of skills is that you've been in performance theatre. Would that be the right term?
An actor.
An actor. He's been an actor. So he was an actor before he went into the corporate world. And that skill acting, performing, means that he's excellent at coaching people to present, and right from the top sort of CEOs, management people, down to the staff. Do you want to sort of talk a little bit about that? Because I'm fascinated by your process.
Well, thank you for that endorsement. That's really nice of you. The other thing that I would just add into that, and it really connects with my experience as an actor, is that I have a deep interest in psychology. I'm practicing transactional analysis, which I won't go into at the moment because I could talk about it forever. So I think those three elements, my acting past, my experience of working within business, and my understanding of psychology is a really great fusion to help present. Because the acting experience helps me think about the delivery elements, voice, appearance, confidence, energy, eyes, vocal animation, and all of this stuff. The business piece helps me understand context. It enables me to have a conversation with a stakeholder and get into their world. But the psychology piece really helps me understand how to deliver a message and how to adapt my message according to the psychological profile of the person that I'm talking to. And you don't have to be a psychologist to get that. And maybe later, there are 3 really easy ways of actually connecting with a person to, firstly, build rapport, and secondly, create what we call in psychology a T moment. It stands for a transformation moment and a aha moment. And that is the point where you can present a product.
We're going to have to find out more about that. You realise that?
But going back to acting, I think where really, yes, it gives you performance skills, and those are invaluable. But there's 2 things I take away from my experience as a performer. The first is discipline. Next to, I think, can I say this? Next to prostitution, it's probably the oldest profession that exists. And working in the theatre is very command and control. You do what the director tells you to do. There's no consensus. Yes, there's a creative process, but there's a discipline there. But also, as an actor, you're trying to imagine what another person's life is like. So if you're playing Hamlet, you've never been a prince of Denmark, or very few of us have been. So the process of trying to imagine and create a character builds things like empathy, understanding. So acting is quite psychologically rooted in its practice, because you're trying to understand and then portray another human being.
That's fascinating. That is because you use that metaphor for when you are teaching people how to present as if it's a performance in the theatre. And you told me something last week that really resonated with me, especially because I'm quite blunt, so I tend to upset people when I'm giving them advice. And luckily, you took it well. That's it, yeah. But yeah, that whole thing about the direct, when you're acting, when a director gives you direction or criticism or advice or whatever it might be, because it's a performance, you take that on board and it's expected.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're in a sort of a business scenario where we're learning a presentation, it's much easier to take offense to criticism and take it personally. But you kind of use the theatre metaphor as a way of...
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting in theatre. I mean, theatre's, we don't call it feedback, we call it notes. And if you didn't have notes or feedback from a director, you'd think they were a really rubbish director. And I think what makes it work in the theatre is that the notes or feedback, they have two qualities. A, you get a lot of it.
Right.
You know, every rehearsal you sit down and the director will talk to you about your performance. It's also very specific.
Right.
So you don't get feedback like, hey, Grant, that was awesome, which might make you feel good. It's a positive stroke, but it tells you nothing really. I mean, I can remember a piece of feedback that I had that was so specific. I was playing on stage. I had to die. I was playing a very, very harrowing scene, and I was on my deathbed, and had to portray a character dying. And the feedback I got was, Sean, we love the emotional intensity you're bringing to the character, but you're losing your diction, and we can't hear what you're saying. So you need to enunciate the words in addition to portraying the emotion. So it's not wishy-washy. It's very specific. And the other thing I think that you can do in theatre, which is hard to do in business, although I incorporate into my presentation training, it's stop, try it again. Right. Do it again, but play it this way. So the feedback isn't like always at the end of the day or the end of the rehearsal process. It's in the moment. And I think one of the things that enables performers to operate in that world is passion. You want to be the best. Even if you're the 100th spear carrier to the left. There are people who want that job. So yeah, I think the combination of its frequency, its specific, and its real time makes it really powerful.
And so if you're training somebody to do a presentation, and just to put this into context with our guys, all of our partners will have to do a presentation. What we teach them to do is, first of all, there's a presentation, which is an audit, which is a sort of question answer style. And then they go into presentation where they'll present a website.
Yeah.
And it's very, the process is pretty much nailed down. But I was explaining to a partner the other day, my advice is to record your presentation so you can listen back to it, because, and I'm sure you teach this, that there can be real subtleties. Some of the things that you can say where you may be reading the script verbatim, like it is when you're in the theatre, but the context and the delivery can blow the deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
So things like, tonality, facial expressions, timing, the way that your enthusiasm for it, listening, presentations, feedback, there's so many things. Is that something you get your guys do? Do you record it?
Absolutely. The best way to learn is to see yourself, and to hear yourself. So, I didn't notice. When I presented, I had what's called classically Velcro arms.
Okay.
Was this part of my arm was always, so my gestures were coming from here. It's really common.
Right.
And something about just taking hold of the space.
Yeah.
Make visually, you look completely different. So absolutely. I always talk about presentations it's a bit like swimming. You can't learn it from a book. You've got to get in the pool, get wet, have a go, and get some feedback. And absolutely, I mean, linking back to acting, the methodology that I use is rehearsal. We can go through the theory really quickly, and then we just keep practicing and practicing and practicing, seeing yourself, hearing yourself. Yes, there are tips. tips that we can incorporate. But then it's about practicing and seeing yourself. So whenever I do presentation training, it's not theory, it's an experience. So people come into the session. My job is to make sure that when they leave the classroom, they're better. And not just in confidence, they're better in terms of how they deliver, whether that is their use of voice, whether it's their use of eyes, whether it's their materials that they're presenting. But that's my job. So I don't do presentation skills to deliver a lot of theory so people can have a nice think about it. I want to make people better. Just as when you do a rehearsal, you're not there to think about it, you're there to work and try and improve.
So I've got a question from Neil, and it's a really great question, Neil, because this refers back to you said there's 3 parts to it, the psychology bit. So yeah. Do you think the presentation style should be flexible based on who you are presenting to?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing is what am I trying to do? Presentations for me are about impact. Am I trying to sell something? Am I trying to engage people with something? Am I trying to get people to buy into an idea? Am I trying to deliver bad news? Am I trying to educate? What is the impact that I'm trying to make? And unless you know that, your audience aren't going to know it. So the first thing to think about is what impact am I trying to make? Now, I'd imagine that most people on the call today, the impact that they want is to sell a product. And whether that's, I want to get people excited or engaged. And then that has to really come through, not only what you visually present, but also you in terms of your energy. So, if I'm trying to get you excited, there has to be something excited in me. If I was trying to educate you and deliver quite a difficult message, I might change my energy to be more sporadic, more focused, and more controlled. So again, you need to match the energy according to the impact that you want to make.
And I think that, to sort of emphasize that, guys, in terms of Neil's question in relation to our presentation, I always use the analogy, not always the case, but quite often, if you're dealing with somebody who might be an engineer or an accountant, somebody who's a lot more sort of analytical, typically you will slow things down and go into more detail. But the main thing about the presentation style and being flexible that I would say is that at the beginning of the presentation, we do the audit, which is a lot of questions, where you're going to get the measure of the kind of person that you're dealing with. As well, Sean said about bonding and rapport, which happens right at the beginning. One of the purposes of that is to find out who it is you're dealing with, what kind of person are they, because you will change your presentation to reflect their personality positively. For example, Sean, one of the examples I always use is in websites, and this is a generic thing that is pretty much the world over. You're either going to get somebody who loves the idea of being able to update the website themselves on the back end, or it's somebody who thinks that's the worst thing ever. Finding that out at the beginning of the presentation is going to change your presentation. Because you will want to emphasize, we can do both with BLAM, obviously. Either one is fine, but we would emphasize the one that appeals to them most. And that's the purpose of asking questions at the beginning, so that you can present in a way that is appropriate to your audience. And what I love about Sean's methodology is this is a performance, guys. When we are selling, you're acting, you're on show. It's a performance that needs to be rehearsed. You're going to be your best self when you deliver that performance, because you've worked on it, you've honed it, you've watched yourself do it over and over again. It's really important, guys, that you own that performance and that you know it so well that you can adapt it to your audience.
I think building on that, Grant, and this is where the psychological piece comes in. I'm going to use some kind of psychological jargon now, and I will explain in a moment. It's getting a sense of the cognitive modality that your audience is using. And what I love about cognitive modalities, there are just 3 of them. And it doesn't matter what our job is and what our audience are, there are 3 modalities. And that is, we can think, we can feel, and we can do.
Okay.
That's the 3 ways in which we process information: thinking, feeling, doing.
Right.
You all have, it's called an individual front door, target door, and trap door. My particular sequence is, my front door is feeling.
Right.
My target door is thinking. And my trap door is doing. So we have most of our defenses around our trap door. So if you were to ask me, hey, Sean, what are you going to do? I'll go, because you're engaging my trap door.
Right.
And I have the most defenses around my trap door. Now, for some people, it might be feeling. For some people, it might be thinking. If you ask someone a question and you can see them physically start to clam up, think about the type of question that you've asked them. Is it a thinking question, feeling question, or doing question? Because if they're closing up, you probably hit their trap door. So for me, if you want to engage me, questions to build rapport are, Sean, how do you feel about that? What are you feeling at the moment? Is to appeal to my feeling system, because that is my open door. However, my target door is thinking. That's the area that I can personally make transformation and change in. So if you were trying to excite me with a product, you build rapport with me through feeling.
Yeah.
And when the moment is right to start positioning your product, then you would switch to thinking, because my target door is thinking. Now, people who are experts in psychology can just look at you and they can figure that out. I'm still building my understanding. I'm only part qualified in the field, but you basically, it's a process of hit and miss. So if you ask the wrong question and someone clams up, you try a different modality, and eventually there's only 3 of them: thinking, feeling, and doing.
So this is going to be really helpful when it comes to the close, if you're in a sales presentation. Yeah. Because you'll want to close them on the target door.
Brilliant. Yeah. You build rapport on the open door.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you present the client, you close the deal effectively with the target. The target door is where the person is most transformational in their thinking.
Yeah. And that transformation is something we talk about a lot, because we sell transformation. That's our goal, is to show you where you are now, show you where you are going to be. The transformation is the bit that we're selling.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating. That is, and a lot, I'm a big fan of sales psychology. I love sales psychology. I love help, trying to dig under the bonnet and understanding, what makes people make decisions, makes them tick. And this a lot, I like that 3 because it simplifies it. The one I was taught was the disc profiling, which is 4, and it's it's pretty intense trying to figure it out. But that 3, I like that because potentially you can use your bonding and rapport. If you use that tactically, you could get a good idea of what door is going to press their button.
Yeah. Exactly. And if you're asking a lot of doing type questions, what do you want to do in a person, then just change the modality. What do you think about that? or what would, how would you feel if that appeals to, we can feel, think, and do, and we can do all three, but all of us have a slightly different front door in terms of what is our primary processing modality. I mean, if you want to learn more about that, just it's what I'm citing is called the WARE sequence, which is WARE. It's named after the person who originated it. So
brilliant.
Have a mooch on Google.
I'll have a nose at that. I need to make a note of that. WARE sequence.
Yeah,
awesome.
WARE.
So just to sort of wrap things up, I want to know, I'd love to know the process you went through that got you your deal. Because this time last week, we were wishy-washy.
Well, the thing that got me the deal is, I would say, it's two things. It's my network. So the deal came, it didn't come directly from my network, but someone in my network recommended me to this person.
Referral.
Yeah, a referral.
Yes.
And I was quite lucky. They actually spelled out what they want, which I know is quite, sometimes you meet customers and they're like, well, we don't know what we want, but we're hoping you can help us figure it out. And then what I simply did was I made sure that in my response, I tailored my response to what they wanted. So even my LinkedIn profile, which they had, there were relevant bits of feedback from clients I've had, which I just put it all in a document. Said, oh, by the way, I know you want to do X. Here's some feedback from an actual client where I've done this before. I wordsmithed it so it sounded beautiful.
Yeah.
So I was looking for the experience they wanted. So they wanted I'd never heard of this acronym before. I'm going to show myself up now for not knowing it. But it's a FANG. They wanted to work with a person who had FANG experience.
Really?
I had to go and look it up on the internet, but it basically means if you worked for one of the big tech firms like Google or LinkedIn, Microsoft.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it stands for actual something.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't worked for Amazon, Google, but in my last organization, our biggest client was Google. I've worked with Microsoft and used that. So again, you said, right, I said, this is what I have done. I know you're looking for a person with experience. Google happened to be my last company's biggest client and blah, blah, blah. So I made sure that I knew what they were looking for. And then I focused my experience to that. And it was enough to get me the deal.
So did you use any sort of particular tactics? Was it all a bit of a corporate thing where you kind of had to jump through a few hoops to?
It was corporate, and I think what really did help was the fact that it was through my network. So my personal recommendation in terms of the person who knew me, who experienced me, it was actually it's a person I mentor. It was my mentee.
Brilliant.
Yeah, she referred to me, and she's worked with me. I used to manage her, and that's really it's really paid dividends. But the piece of work that I'm tendering for, which I'm hoping to hear for by the end of this week, is to do, it's to help them, it's to help an organization with presentation capability, but particularly doing presentations online. And I really used in my proposal that, I was starting thinking about, well, what can I offer that is different? What differentiates me from the crowd? And I was an actor. I've worked in business. I'm training in psychology. So I worked that into my proposal. And hopefully, fingers. I mean, I know I've been shortlisted, so we will see what happens.
That's awesome. That's brilliant. It's been a pleasure talking to you again, Sean, and I'm really delighted that you've taken the plunge and that you are going it alone. I'm sure that you will not look back. And you've got the ball rolling. Just a quick shout out to everybody. Where can people get hold of you? And
what I'll do. So my company's called Brighton. So you can look for me on Google. if I put it in the Facebook community page.
Yeah.
No, don't worry. I'm doing it now. So
thank you, Edward.
I'm sharing all your links for you. Just
brilliant.
my little commentary on that. That was literally just blew my head. the door analogy has just been really, really good. So definitely worth thinking about when you're talking to people. Really, really good. Just a quick shout out to the people that were on the session today. So thank you so much for joining us here. We've had obviously Neil McLaren with his question. We've had Suzanne here. We've had let me just have a quick look. Sedres is Tuto. Javinder's here. Good to see you, Jave. Jamie Hill, way back. So lots of Gurdev. We've had about 15 people join us on the live event. We'll be dropping in those links as well in the chat. This video will be available for replay. If you're listening to this on the podcast, because we're going to be sharing this on the podcast as well, or you're seeing this again, be sure to reach out to Sean. So I've dropped the website link in there. I've dropped your LinkedIn link in there. So much appreciated, Sean. Really, really awesome.
Thank you. And thanks for the opportunity. It's really appreciated.
Definitely. And we need to get our hands out to fill the screen. We got to fill the screen.
Use your Pinosphere.
Brilliant. Thanks for watching and listening, guys. And we'll see you next week on Bland Partners Inner Circle. Sean Miller, thanks very much, mate.
Thank you.